Hey everybody, my name is Ryan Shear with Lebanon Now. I'm talking to Police Chief Jerry Harrison, Lebanon Police Department. There's been a lot going on in Lebanon. I had Matt Frederick on recently and asked Jerry if he would come join us and speak to us as well. And of course, he said yes. So how are we doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm going to scoot that microphone just a little closer to you.
There we go.
Oh, no, you're good. Let's start from the top. There's a lot of people out there doing the news. I get a lot of questions a day. There's been a little bit of activity here in Lebanon recently with the shootings and everything like that. And I think that's on most people's minds. We've had several shootings in a small amount of time. What can you kind of tell us about those?
Well, if you look at them, we get caught up in the short, brief time span that these things have happened in because it is shocking. Mm-hmm. However, when you back out, and I always try to back out when I look at something that's really concerning, I always try to back out. What's the big picture here? And if you look over time, in the last 12 months, we've had 8 incidents involving firearms. Mm-hmm. So while these recent events are tragic and devastating especially to some members of our community, over the grand scheme, if you back out, Lebanon is not a shocking place to live. It's a safe place to be. The problem is that the recent ones have been, the level of tragedy that come out of the recent events is just terrible. Absolutely. And the one that's in everybody's mind
is where a young lady was murdered and her baby didn't survive. And people are asking a lot about that. And is there anything today you can tell us any more about that investigation?
No, there's not anything to release yet. And we can talk about the why behind that if you'd like. But at this point, I'm not at liberty to share where we're at in the investigation.
Absolutely. And tell us the whys, because a lot of people out there don't necessarily understand why you guys are being so close-lipped about the investigation.
Well, first of all, I just want to start and let the audience know I do have some notes in front of me, but I am speaking from the heart. And it's important to me that this information gets out. And so that's why I kind of put some notes down here. So I'll be looking at my notes, but I hope it doesn't appear disingenuous, but it's just that these points are important to me.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I want everybody to know about them. And so, why? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Number one is when we talk about a case, we can compromise evidence that's in a case. So, I'm trying to think of a specific detail that, on a major case that's happened in our country that everybody knows about, and a specific detail that broke that case. If you go back and read on any major cases, true crime and all that, the folks that are in the true crime genre will know that there's a lot of times there's one key piece of evidence or several key pieces of evidence that police hold that tight. And somehow someone in the community knows that information, and that is what points the investigation right onto that individual. And so that's just one of many reasons. So we don't want to compromise evidence. We don't want to influence witnesses. And of course, we don't want to alert suspects to what we know. But again, also, remembering that people have a right to a jury trial, and that jury is of your peers, i.e. those folks are going to come from Laclede County, the registered voters of Laclede County. And so, unless, of course, they do a change of venue somehow, which is always possible, I suppose. But at any rate, we don't want to prejudice a jury pool with too much information. And we certainly don't want to violate anybody's rights, whether that's civil rights, privacy rights, or their reputation, particularly if no one's been charged. So some of the other reasons, we have to maintain the public trust. So every word, anybody on Facebook, anybody in the media is free to speculate. Now, I know you want to protect your reputation and you guard it zealously, and I'm in that same boat. So, we can't do anything that makes the public feel like they can't trust what we have to say. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, you can just naturally say less. And I know that's frustrating, but it's key to what we have to do. We don't speculate, and we don't want to make things worse or that. Now, the follow on to that is the silence the message gets filled in. There's so much noise.
Yes.
And if we don't share our story, of course, other people are going to jump in and share their version of what they want it to be,
Yes.
what they speculate it to be. So I guess, the best thing I can say to that is silence doesn't mean inaction. And these cases are built brick by brick, just like any business that you've worked with in your past careers. When you're in the marketing hat, when you have your marketing hat on, you and I both know that success builds up over time.
Yes.
It doesn't come today. You start a business today, you build your business brick by brick by brick. And then one day you look back and you've got this huge edifice of accomplishment. And that's what we're doing here. We're building this case brick by brick.
And not only that, is that how investigations work as well. Everything that you said, and that if it hits the prosecutor's desk and you've done something wrong or you don't have enough, then it doesn't move forward. And it's one of those things. There's lab tests, there's evidence, there's questioning, everything's got to be in place, because once it gets there, the investigation isn't over, but you have to have enough to take these people to court, and that may take some time. It doesn't happen like it does on TV.
That's true. And to your point, working with the prosecutor. So, we each have I may be in law enforcement.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want me representing you as an attorney, right?
Right, me either. Yes.
I'm not an officer of the court. I am not an expert in the ongoings of the courtroom, and the courtroom is a very complicated place. And you have a judge as a referee, you have the prosecutor bringing the state case. And so that portion is an ongoing event. In some cases, it starts that ongoing interaction between law enforcement and the prosecutor. It begins at the crime scene at the start of a case sometimes, not always, but on a rare occasion. But that's an ongoing event. So I assure you that we are working with the courtroom experts that we serve under, which is the prosecutor's office. We work with them to bring them the case that they need to make. And so as the case progresses, it's a back and forth conversation of, okay, well, we need more here, we need more there, we need this testing, we need that testing. And so it's a team effort, it's a collaborative effort.
And it takes a time.
It takes a lot of time. And the other thing that takes time is the field of forensics, the field of scientific studies that so many of these cases have a big piece. Now, I'll tell this. Cases are solved by good, hard police work. Solid, steady, brick by brick police work. That's what solves cases. A piece of those brick by brick steps is the forensic science world. And as you know, that's a very specialized world. Those folks in that world do one thing. This person may be a fingerprint examiner. This person may be a DNA, whatever you do with DNA. This person may be a tool mark examiner, handwriting examiner. This person may mine data from technology pieces, electronic equipment. So these experts are not common. They're few and far between. The need for them outweighs the availability that they have. And so sadly, there are many tragedies in our country, even in our region in the Midwest. And so we share this resource to be more efficient to taxpayers. We can't afford to have a fingerprint examiner on staff at all times. So we have to send something off for the fingerprints to be developed and examined and compared, and then an expert weighs in on them. And then that expert's available for court. And so that's just one expertise. So in the cases that we have ongoing right now, there are many expertises involved, and we're leveraging all of those. And we have partners. We have particularly the Laclede County Sheriff's Office is an amazing partner. Sadly, they've had a tragedy of their own down in south part of the county that they're now dealing with. And we're working together on that as needed. We support each other in that respect. But they were definitely a big piece of this investigation. And I'm sure that will be a big part of each other's investigations as these cases go on. We have the Highway Patrol as a big part of our investigation. And we have several federal agencies that are involved or providing resources to us as well to be a force multiplier for our community.
Now, we've had, you said there was multiple incidents involving gun violence.
Yes.
And so we've talked about the most talked about case, I think. But you said there was multiple. Now, I do recall where there was a situation on, I call them over in the presidential streets.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that was on North Monroe on May 5th.
Yeah.
We had a attempted murder or an assault with a deadly weapon or assault with a firearm, where the victim was shot, and then the suspect killed themselves, committed suicide. So that case is still ongoing. We have a few boxes to check there, so we're going through and confirming that things are as they appear in that case.
And that was on May 5th. And just to highlight a point, not to because I know everybody out there is upset and they want answers or whatever, but that was pretty what we would consider open shut. And it's from May 5th, and it's just now getting ready to have the boxes checked off.
I think to the layperson, it may look like an open and shut case, but to law enforcement, our job is to scrutinize every detail. So you may say that it happened this way. I appreciate what you had to say, and I'm going to document what you have to say. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the physical evidence. I'm going to look at the science. I'm going to send off things to the experts for testing, and I'm going to see, did it happen the way Ryan told me it happened? That's our role. Our role isn't to walk in, take the easiest choice, and walk out. Our role is to find what happened. Absolutely. And so while it may look clear cut to the layperson and someone, well, common sense says this happened, probably right. But we're not going to reside on probably. We're talking about human beings. And so we need to know that's right. And so for that reason, it is dealt with in a methodical fashion. And frankly, it would have been cleared up by now had we not had these other challenges come up that also, by the way, involve human beings.
Of course. And then we had I guess next in the series, we just shooting over on Audrey.
Yes.
And that's still an open investigation as well, correct?
That is an open investigation. And again, is also continuing. And again, conjecture on my part, I would like to think that we probably would have moved through that case any other time if we hadn't had this compression of tragic affairs.
And I think another question that we get a lot, and I wanted to ask you, do any of these incidents seem connected at all? I know you can't give us a definitive answer, but as much as you've investigated them and move forward, is there anything looking that connects any of these shootings together?
There is nothing, based on the information we have at this time, there is nothing that indicates these are connected. Can that change? I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't pick it up in the shop on my way here,
Right, right. But it would be very surprising.
Yes, it would be. It would be surprising. And it's not that it's outside the realm of possibilities, but from the information we have no reason to suspect that any of this is connected.
And I think what we see on Facebook, what we see in the town, what we hear in the streets and people is they just want to make sure our town's safe. Because when you have, like you said, a compression of these incidents, I don't know that it makes anybody feel any better that they're separate incidents, but to know there's not a sustainable public threat that hasn't been brought in yet, it makes me feel better anyway.
Right. Yeah. We have no reason to suspect that there is a danger to the community at large. It appears that each one of these incidents, based on the information we have, it appears that each one of these incidents was specifically related to the people involved. They were aware, they knew each other, that kind of thing. So might I be wrong? I don't know what we're going to discover next, but based on the information we have, we're not pursuing it in that direction. We're pursuing it in a direction in which we're pretty sure we know, we're reasonably confident in what we know.
That's fair. Now, as we talk about these incidents and as we talk about these things that happen, these were all incidents that you were pulled into after the incident had occurred.
True.
Right?
Yes.
Being a police officer and a public safety officer, what is the difference between prevention and investigation? Like, what are some of the things? Because I know for a fact that police get pulled into it after it's done a lot of the times. But what are things you guys are doing to prevent these crimes and prevent these things from happening in our community?
Well, I think that's an important conversation because so often we look at numbers, right? And we think, well, like in sports, the numbers are clear cut. You either had more points or you didn't. For law enforcement, those numbers are not clear cut because really what we need to be judged on is zeros. And when you're judged on zeros, it's hard to show a lot of things that you wish you could demonstrate the need of or what have you. So prevention is the key to everything in our world. And so there's a lot of preventive efforts that we can go, that we undertake. The key to those preventive efforts, though, is a relationship with the community. And because, you have 32 police officers in the city of Lebanon, but you have over 15,000 people, and 32 people cannot rescue 15,000 people. Mm-mm. So it takes all of us working together, and every individual in our community has a responsibility to police this community. And when I say police, sometimes that means, let's talk about suicide for a minute, right? Ugly topic, uncomfortable topic. But the fact is that people that complete suicide, they don't want to die. What they want is the pain to stop. They're hurting. And, as most of us walking down the street, if we saw somebody with a large wound on their knee because they'd just fallen and split their knee open on the curb, or they had a head injury, we'd all jump in and start doing the best first aid that we know how to do.
Right.
And we would willingly do that, right? And we need to do that with mental health too. And so what can I do to prevent suicide? I can talk to you about what are the signs of suicide, and then what should people do when they see them. So, some of the warning signs that we talk about are people that are feeling, they demonstrate a feeling of hopelessness, or they talk about dying. People that withdraw from their friends, or they quit doing all the hobbies or whatever that they enjoyed doing. People that have a change in mood, or they can't sleep, and by the way, when I say change in mood, it doesn't have to be a sad mood, because, someone may be suffering from a mental illness, from depression. And when they finally make that determination that they're going to complete suicide, they make their plan and they go forward with it. They have a sense of relief because they know that the end is near. And so sometimes that, when you see that elevated change, that change in mood that goes to, oh, it's a great day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's a key that things are going to happen now.
And that's one of the weirdest signs in suicide.
That's right.
When I was going through training and learning about that thing is, yes, because when you're depressed or you're ill mentally, or and like you said, you're stuck, you want out, whatever that case may be, is that, yes, once you decide to do it, there's a lot of cases where people are walking around whistling, happier than they've ever been, right. And everybody around them kind of relaxes and goes, okay, Joe's feeling better now. And then the next day you get the horrible news.
Right. And so again, one of the things to look for, increased substance abuse, increased alcohol abuse, and then of course giving away belongings, going mm-hmm. around saying their final goodbyes, those kind of things. So you look for those things. And when you see those things, call 911. It's an emergency. And, this person doesn't want to die. They want the pain to stop. Or you can call 988. There's a suicide crisis lifeline out there called 988. I think the bottom line here is our community has resources, and we can help. We can connect people with those resources.
You said 2 points that I want to bring together here. One, that if somebody has a physical wound, that you're going to try to help them. And going back to the 911 thing, is you'd immediately call 911, right?
Sure.
What about, like, you're calling 911 or 988 for the prevention or for the help of somebody? Address, if I hope I'm not wrong. Like, because isn't that, I think, a lot of the things with mental illness is you're like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe because you can see the gaping head wound and go, oh, correct. I'm not wrong. There's a problem there. Make that call anyway, correct?
Sure. Make the call. What's the worst that's going to happen? I think, so many times we find ourselves in a situation and saying, what should we do? What do I do? What am I supposed to do right now? When you find yourself in that situation, the first step is to say, okay, how do I not make this problem worse? If you don't say something, you might be making it worse. Mm-hmm. So say something. Even if you don't call the police, you can call 988. Yep. If you don't want to call 988, there's other social networks in our community that you can reach out to. Reach out to a trusted pastor, a trusted friend. We have mental health resources in our community. Make a phone call. Take them there. Be a supportive person here. It's interesting to me that, if I lost my leg in an accident, you would call and say, hey, can I mow your yard? Hey, do you need a ride to a doctor's appointment? Isn't that interesting that when it's there and it's obvious and it's in your face, we have no problem helping people, right? This is no different. This is, instead of it being a physical ailment, it's a mental ailment. And be that support. Don't judge, but be that support.
So when you as a police officer get that call of, we have somebody that we think is in mental distress or mental harm, or how do you guys handle that? How do you guys, what is your protocol when you get one of those calls?
Well, the first goal of a police officer should be the minimal intrusion into people's lives with the maximum compliance with the law. Now, there is a law out there that says if you're a danger to yourself or others, we can take you into protective custody. It's not the goal, right? Our goal isn't to take people into custody and all that. So we want to start at the lowest level of intervention that we can. And so our officers are trained to deal with these things. We are trained in what's called a crisis intervention team. And they understand a trauma-informed approach to working with people, a compassionate approach. And they also understand that, we don't need to immediately resort to this protective custody decision. We have other resources. And so we try to connect them with, like our county mental health care provider is Compass. And Compass Behavioral Health, I think, is their name. And we work with them all the time, and we're trying to refer people to the resources they need to be a success in life, whether it's mental health care for suicidal thoughts, or whether it's maybe they need some money handling skills or parenting skills, or whatever those skills are. We have a lot of resources in our community and a lot of philanthropy in our community that wants to step up and help. And so, that first step is to try to make that connection. If that isn't successful in these extreme cases, if we have the opportunity to intervene, then of course we're going to have to take them into protective custody.
So let's shift gears just a little bit, because I know we have more things that we wanted to cover today. Because one of the first incident we talked about was a domestic violence shooting.
Right.
That we can confirm, at least say that much.
Correct. I feel comfortable saying that
yes,
all appearances are that was a shooting that was related to domestic violence.
Yes, and we are talking. Let's very carefully. That was the one that happened on May 5th.
Right.
Correct.
Thank you for clearing that.
Yeah, over on North Monroe. I just want to make sure that we're correct on this. So domestic violence is probably a call you get on an often basis.
Of course. Yeah.
A thing in here, and in our groups, in our Facebook group and on our page and in the community, we've seen a lot of calls about domestic violence and how do we prevent that, and that people think there's been a rise in it, whether there has or not. That's a statistical anomaly. But what do you guys do on the police force to address domestic violence, to help get people out of those situations, or to enforce, or how are you handling domestic violence situations?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to, so I think one of the things that's important to say when we talk about suicide and domestic violence, and by the way, I appreciate you bringing up what are we specifically talking about in reference to each case here. I'm not going to talk about necessarily a specific case, but I think these elements are present in some of these cases. Some of these cases I can't say yet. Some of these cases I believe they are. And some of them may not apply at all, but it's worth talking about, because these are not law enforcement problems. These are people problems. These are community problems. These are problems that we are all responsible to help with. And so when we talk about domestic violence, again, I want to tell people, know the signs. You could see a coworker or friend, someone you go to church with, you see bruising or injuries, and they just have a goofball explanation for it that just makes you go, I don't know.
Yeah.
You see someone that used to be very social and they're beginning to isolate. That could be pressure. They're being pressured to isolate. Or maybe they're involved with a partner who starts exhibiting jealous behavior, controlling behavior. And then, of course, changes in the person's behavior in general. So those are all signs that we can all look for in domestic violence. When you call the police, when police respond to a domestic violence call, the first thing is safety. We're going to make the scene safe. And again, we never want to make it worse. We want to intrude at that lowest level we can to do our job. Now, there are some Missouri is a mandatory arrest state. So when certain things occur, or when certain factors are present. That doesn't mean they're going to arrest every time we go to a domestic violence call, but when certain factors are present, it's outside of our hands. We have to make the arrest, or we're in violation of the law and can be prosecuted for that. And there's a purpose behind that. Now, if that purpose valid or not, I can't say that the research directs me to have an opinion either way. I think there's more than one way to work through the domestic violence problem that we have. Is it an epidemic in our community based on recent events? I wouldn't go that far, but you tell me, as a member of our community, what's an acceptable amount of domestic violence to you?
Right.
And I don't have a tolerance for that. Mm-hmm. So one case is not going to be tolerated. That's too many. So we have to address these things. So I would just say that I talk about our community resources. These same resources, this is a community problem. Our community has these resources. We need to connect people with, whether it's parenting, whether it's conflict resolution skills, whether it's anger management skills, substance and alcohol abuse. There's so many different things that contribute to domestic violence. And by the way, let's talk to our kids about it. Why don't you teach your kids how to handle things without violence, without that getting even shot. Don't teach them that that's appropriate. Teach them about self-control and boundaries. Like, it's not appropriate for me to push you just because you irritate me. If we start that process when they're young, hopefully we can maybe prevent a lot of this. But again, what are we doing? Again, we have that trauma-informed approach as we try to compassionately connect victims with the help that they need. But again, there's always that arrest decision sitting right next to us at all times. That's what we do.
Yeah. So I have a couple follow-ups to that. Mm-hmm. One is, can you disclose what those factors are that automatically are arrested?
Yes, it's in state law. If we have probable cause to believe that someone has assaulted someone, physically assaulted someone, if we have clear probable cause there, then we're mandated to make that arrest. Particularly if we can tell who the primary aggressor mm-hmm. is, because sometimes, you can have a mutual affray, or you could have somebody attacked. Maybe you jump me, I black your eye, but you knock me out cold. Mm-hmm. And then the police show up and you say, well, look, man, he gave me a black eye. Well, I'm laying on the floor. I'm out. This guy knocked me out.
Yeah.
So obviously you could be even though you have an injury, you could be the primary aggressor. It could have been a self-defense issue. So we're looking for those kinds of things.
And what about critics out there that would go, well, I made a domestic violence call, they came out and they didn't do anything?
I'd say there's probably more to that story. And maybe that's a layperson's interpretation of it. Maybe we don't do a good job of communicating our role in this thing. Mm-hmm. But if the factors are present, if the factors are present that give us probable cause to believe that law has been violated, then we have to act.
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up here, there was, and we talked about it a little bit before, Eric, because didn't want to shock you, is that we talked about, people, the Lebanon Police Department hasn't been exactly communicative over the cases or whatever. How would you address that and the speculation on social media and kind of the beating you guys take in social media sometimes?
I think, unfortunately, to some degree, that is a necessary evil of law enforcement. We are not able to share a lot for a lot of those reasons. And also, people are innocent until proven guilty. So I can't, if you're a suspect in a crime, I can't run around town trying to build allies against you and talk about what a bad guy you are. It's just not appropriate. And so for that reason, it just leads into that void of information coming out. Now, I will say that law enforcement, I will own this, even as a law enforcement leader, we know that we're not communicating at every opportunity we can. We, work on it every day. We do try to we are trying to be better. We're not experts. And we have many challenges that we're addressing on a day-to-day schedule, just like everybody here that's going into work every day has new challenges that they think you think how your day is going to go. It doesn't go that way. Mm-hmm. But historically, we know that American law enforcement doesn't communicate at the level they should. And then you add into that we can't communicate at any level on some things.
Yes.
So it's difficult, and it's a difficult path. And again, the reason that I brought my notes in isn't because I need something to look at because I don't care or I'm disingenuous and I need to read from a piece of paper. No, it's that I want to make sure this conversation is important to me. This information going out to our community is important to me. And I want to make sure that I get it down here so I can get it out to people. And I want to, and it's worth putting that time in to have that communication. So, it's a skill that we train and we work on all the time. And, we're just trying to get better at that as time goes along.
Well, we appreciate that as the public and media or whatever. We appreciate that. I think a lot of things it's like when you're waiting room and you're just waiting to hear news. You get more antsy and you're waiting to hear more news and you're waiting to hear more news. And that makes people a little aggravated sometimes. But I love what you said about you own up, you haven't invested, but there's a lot of things you just can't talk about.
Right.
And that's how police work happens. So I'm going to give you the end of the show, the end of the segment, how if there's anything that you want to address to the public or say to the public, now's your time, my friend. We get tons of views. So.
Well, and I think that's, first of all, I'm very happy for you and the success that Lebanon Now is having, and Good Morning Lebanon and all your other efforts. I think that's just really neat. And I love you have this showcase for other people to come on and do their things as well. So thank you to everybody a part of that and Ozark Fiber for supporting you guys. But to speak directly to the community, I wrote this down because, again, I didn't just want to come on here and be like, well, I don't know, or, I wanted to have a meaningful conversation. And I think, I understand the community. These cases, particularly the homicide case, has tremendous community interest. It does to me also. I mean, it's the people I work with are living this thing every day, and it's affecting their personal lives and affecting their mental health as well. And hopefully everyone's taking care of themselves, and we check in with each other and try to be each other's keeper in that respect. But we do have to protect the integrity of that investigation. And, law enforcement is an often dark and difficult job. And when you have a dark and difficult job, you have to have a strong why. And, when I sit alone and I think about why do I do what I do? Mm-hmm. Why am I in law enforcement? And the core of the reason I'm in law enforcement is because I learned a long time ago that I can't stand injustices being done to people. It upsets me. Mm-hmm. And so I've spent 28 years of my life seeking justice for people that couldn't seek it themselves without my help. And I think you'll find that a common theme amongst all law enforcement people that are in it for the right reasons. And so it's extremely important to me that justice is served in this case. And so for that reason, I have to be committed to not sharing those details, even if it does reflect negatively to some degree on the people that are working so hard on this case that I serve with every day. But our hearts are with these people, with the families of those that are impacted by these tragedies. Remember, yes, the Reagan Wilson was stolen from our community. I mean, be clear about that. Mm-hmm. She should be here. And my heart breaks for that family, for her family and her loved ones and her friends and how we saw how beloved she was in our community. These suicides are a tragic loss of life in our community as well, Ryan. And so, we are impacted by these tragedies, and our hearts are with those that are also impacted by them on a more personal level. And as soon as we can, we want to give you updates. We want to share what we have. I wish we could, but it wouldn't serve the ultimate goal. And that's seeking justice, which is my number one priority. And so as a team, that's our number one priority. So we've set that goal, and we're committed to that goal. And we may not be what everybody wants us to be, but we're going to get that goal. And that if that's the price of seeking justice for Reagan Wilson and others that are in similar circumstances, then that's just how it's going to be.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today, my friend. You're welcome here anytime.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anytime at all. I thank you for your kind words. And for everybody at you, thanks for sticking with us. It was kind of a longer interview, but I wanted everybody to know Chief Harrison like I do, and understand maybe some of the whys. When somebody gets stolen, like you said, from our community, it's rough. It's hard. When you have to wait on news, it's impeccably hard. When you know the victims and you know the victim's family in a small town, it's even harder. But the police are out there doing their job. We don't get to know everything that gets to go on as the public, and sometimes that's really frustrating. But thank you for coming on and letting us know things are still moving forward and things are going on. If anybody wants to reach out to the police department to ask questions, to inquire about anything, of course, as he says, they can't talk about things. How do they reach out to the police department as a citizen? Not in an emergency, not in whatever, just as a citizen, how do they reach out to the police department?
Well, you can, if you ever need to reach out to the police department, of course, you can call our main line. But I think, this is a good time to talk about our tip line and our tip email. Mm-hmm. For people that may not be comfortable talking to an officer, don't want a police officer at their house, they can call our tip line at 417-991-2344. That's 417-991-2344. Or they can email us at policetips@lebanonmo.org. Policetips@lebanonmo.org. And as always, that could be done confidentially.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the viewers. As I always say, you guys don't have to agree in the comments. Just be respectful. Until next time, this is Ryan with Lebanon Now.